minor clerical mistake made by a volunteer in Bexar County, Administrator Jackie Callanan and her staff removed the ability for everyday citizens volunteering their time to registered voters. Rather than coaching and retraining these public volunteers, Bexar County election staff makes them wait months before they can get retrained, requiring them to show up in person to hear the same presentation read off of pre-printed PowerPoint slides. These abusive and retaliatory actions equate to both poor management and voter suppression. Enough is enough, and it's time for the administrator to step aside and let a new leader reform Bexar County elections. The entire department must undergo a complete culture shift, moving away from penalizing community members to working directly beside voter registrars to engage more San Antonians. We deserve a better, more inclusive elections department who is working year-round to expand democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Mia Duran.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Mia Duran. I am a volunteer deputy registrar. I've been doing VDR since 2006, and recently I've been doing I've been a VDR here in Bexar County since 2021. I came here today to speak to you guys in regards to the new rule that you guys have in place, that any VDR can be fired on the spot if one part of their VDR or their voter registration form is filled out incorrectly. I recently went to the voter registration office to turn in some forms from a weekend, as I always am, anxiously waiting in the room while they check my forms. Cynthia came out and asked me what my VDR number was, and once I told her, she said in shock, "Wow, you've registered almost 300 voters with no mistakes until today. I will have to cancel your VDR number now." The panic set in, and I asked when the soonest I would be able to get back out there. She told me I'd have to wait 30 days. So after searching for when the next VDR training in person would take place, she told me it would be July 9th. I've worked at many jobs before, and I've never been fired on the spot and have to wait 30 days for training. I'm currently still suspended and awaiting my training day. I've spoken to many volunteers that have also worked as a VDR here in the county, and many have shared with me their experiences and how unhappy they have been as well. Once they've been fired, they hardly ever return. This rule dissuades people from coming back and volunteering with the county. In conclusion, I urge the council to reevaluate this rule and create a culture of collaboration between Bexar County elections and local nonpartisan organizations and their community. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Dylan Villalon.
Good afternoon. My name is Dylan Villalon, and I'm here on behalf of Move Texas. We build the political power of young people through civic engagement and voter registration. I want to first thank the county for convening here today after such a long hiatus. It's important that we are consistently re-examining the state of our elections, and this space is where that happens, so I appreciate it. My colleagues and I are here once again today to tell you about the obstacles and the issues that we faced with the Bexar County Elections Office over the years under Ms. Callanan's administration. To name one, there have been consistent failures for Bexar County to establish the required amount of polling locations in 2020 and 2022. My colleagues and I had to wrangle up some awesome, passionate students from college campuses around San Antonio to come up here and plead for more polling locations. And the crazy part is that really didn't work. It was the state that mandated us to create more polling locations, and that was kind of wild to see. Other patterns of behavior, like closing the elections office with little to no public notice, denying reciprocities of VDRs during election season, or violating the Americans with Disabilities Act by suppressing awareness for curbside voting back in 2020, which is yet another instance which other organizations had to step in and create accountability for Callanan's administration. In this case, it was TCRP and Move Texas who needed to intervene. When you ask young VDRs from San Antonio about our elections, you hear cautionary tales about hostility and malpractice. When you tell VDRs from other counties about our experiences, they stand in disbelief because it's simply better in a lot of other ways in different counties. The number of VDRs in Bexar is dropping like a rock, and I promise you it's in large part due to the large scale and the small scale practices of our elections office. This culture and these processes start and end with Ms. Callanan. And with respect to her appointed position and the amount of time that she's held the position, it's time to begin searching for an elections administrator that can bring a fresh approach to the work and that's in alignment with the needs of our city and not the preference of an official. We need to start with the basics. I'm talking about easy access to election info that's up to date. No more closing the office without notice or having to scavenge the internet for basic hours of operation. These things directly inhibit not just the process of elections but in Bexar County, but also the culture around civic engagement. And we have to reevaluate the way that elections is conducting our voter registration and education efforts. It's not right or fair for that the expectation for all of the voter registration and education efforts to fall on local nonprofits to carry it out. As a youth civic engagement organization committed to voter education and empowerment, Move Texas demands action from the Bexar County Election Commission to address these problems. A transparent and accountable election administration process is essential for fostering civic trust and ensuring that all eligible voters are supported to participate in our democracy without barriers or discrimination. Taken together, these problems undermine the growth of a civic culture aimed to building the democracy from the ground up. It's time for a new elections administrator. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you. Let me have Rosario Zarb Cousin.
Good afternoon. My name is Rosario, and I'm speaking on behalf of a citizen who does voter roll reviews. Did you know that the Bexar County voter rolls has an estimated 13,000 voters identified as commercial addresses, 8,000 identified as vacant addresses, and 11,000 identified as invalid addresses? The Texas Election Code election, section 1.015, defines a voter residence as a domicile that is one's home and fixed place of habitation to which one intends to return after a temporary absence. Resident addresses are used by our election office for mailing of voter registration cards, applications for mail-in ballots, and mail-in ballots. Our latest mailing of voter registration cards included undeliverable addresses and voter addresses that did not meet our election code definition of residence. The cost of the undeliverable addresses to Bexar County is estimated at $176,000 and can be reoccurring for each election mailout. The National Change of Address database identified approximately 54,000 records in Bexar County voter rolls for those who have moved and out of state or out of county. Reviews currently in progress estimate 20% of these voters have voted at their new location while remaining on our voter rolls. The voter registrar is not required to confirm that voter rolls addresses are valid unless challenged. But if a voter's registration is challenged, the voter registrar must send a notice to confirm the voter's registration address. However, this corrective action is not being applied since the challenge process has been discontinued for the voter registrar, as noted by one of our next speakers. I am currently working with the team reviewing our voter rolls, and to date we have submitted 2,500 challenges with the potential of 2,000 more challenges before the August 7th deadline. However, with an election administrator unwilling to maintain clean voter rolls and rejecting the help of volunteers, we have reported this to the Secretary of State and will be reporting to the Commissioner's Court. Thank you.
Thank you. Taylor Trevino.
Good afternoon. Hello. My name is Taylor Trevino. And I am the Voting Rights Senior Advocacy Manager for the Texas Civil Rights Project. I thank you all for calling this meeting today to continue the discussion of what's next for the important position of Elections Administrator. I'm here to ask that you all begin the search for a new Elections Administrator immediately so that they can begin after the general election in November. I think that I, along with other representatives from voting rights and civic engagement organizations, have been clear about the negative things we've seen in the past from our elections department, so I didn't want to go there again. But there's one situation that I wanted to bring to your attention that should be of concern to everyone here. As I've shared before, our current elections administrator has a history of posting polling locations online well after the deadline, which is 3 weeks before Election Day. This past May, ahead of the local uniform election, our elections administrator again decided that her preference and opinion trumped the Texas Election Code. According to the San Antonio report, she believed that publishing the Election Day locations that far in advance, while the early voting locations were also posted, would just confuse voters. Does she really think that Bexar County voters aren't smart enough to distinguish between early voting and Election Day, so much so that she feels entitled to dismiss state law? I've never heard of voters being confused about this, and they seem to be able to figure it out in every other county, but we have heard complaints from voters about not being able to find their polling locations online. I say this in an effort, again, to urge our county officials to hold our elections administrator accountable so that this doesn't happen in the future. This is also an example of the opposite of what we want to see from our elections department going forward. The next leader of this department should be someone who understands the residents they serve, who sees the struggles they face when trying to register to vote or cast a ballot, and works to resolve those issues and remove any unnecessary barriers. Someone who upholds and defends voting rights and works with our county commissioners and other officials to make sure the department has what it needs to best serve Bexar County voters. We urge Bexar County to begin the search for a new elections administrator immediately, and I hope to hear updates about the future of this position in the near future, if not later this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Kay Chiodo.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity and for all the hard work y'all do and all these issues you face. Today, I'd like to just be here on behalf of the deaf community here in Bexar County. Over 10 plus years, we met with Miss Jackie Cowlin, and even, well, before that even, but 10 plus years ago, we actually brought in 5 to 6 deaf people to register for voter registers. That really excited your deaf community because they didn't have the access to register because they couldn't read if they required ASL, the voter cards. Unfortunately, it was more of a photo op because the press was bought in, and we didn't do that part. I actually just brought some members from the deaf community and interpreted the event for Ms. Callahan. Unfortunately, today there's still an issue, and even though Ms. Callahan felt it was very convenient to have 2 places in all of Bexar County, actually 1, it might as well have been none because it was not made aware to the deaf community that these places were there without someone who worked in an organization letting them know. The general deaf population wasn't given any information on where they could vote with access. And unfortunately, those places were not ready. The deaf gentleman in one situation at Ms. Callahan's office was in the middle of your voting room with people watching them and listening to him. And there were people from the public that were in there that should have been out of the building. But anyway, I just would like you to please consider this upcoming election as very, very important. And the access is not costly, it's fairly simple, and we would like for you to consider, especially for this presidential election, making that accessible in 1 or 2 locations in all Bexar County. I don't know of any population that would accept that. We have begged for years and years, Ms. Callahan. I think you're a great person. I think you're extremely intelligent. We just need someone with a heart for giving access and those rights to all of the people in our county. And I wish you the very best, and thank you for listening to me. Y'all have a blessed weekend, and try and stay out of trouble. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Gary Chick.
Good afternoon. Last Friday, we met with Jackie Callanan and her staff responsible for voter rolls. We've been submitting voter challenges based on the United States Post Office's National Change of Address database, where people file for a permanent change of address. We are now able to provide lists of people who have filed for a permanent change of address and have also registered to vote from that new address. based on Secretary of State voter rolls. Our goal in meeting with Jackie and her team was to make sure we are providing them with information in an easy-to-read, logical, and useful format. At this meeting, we learned the Elections Department had stopped processing all of our challenges. When asked why, she provided a printout from the election administrator in Travis County that stated, speaking only for the county I work in, Travis County's current position is that these lists sourced from the USPS's NCOA do not meet the personal knowledge component of legal voter roll challenges set forth in Texas Election Code section 16.092, and Jackie let us know this is her position as well. Without reading the entire section due to time constraints, the pertinent part of section 16.092 says the person making the challenge is making it based on their personal knowledge of the grounds for the challenge. In 2018, Texas Senator Paul Betancourt requested a formal law advisory opinion from the SOS to define what the term personal knowledge meant. They obliged. The SOS, in election law opinion RP-1 stated, personal knowledge is not defined in section 16.092 of the code, nor is it defined elsewhere in the code. It has been defined by Texas courts and other authorities in various contexts to include information which is based on one's observation and or experience and can include logical conclusions based on underlying facts and knowledge derived from various sources. Using multiple government databases, i.e. USPS, NCOA, and SOS voter rolls that indicate a person has moved from County A to County B and they have registered to vote in County B would be the textbook definition of logical conclusions based on underlying facts that were derived from various sources, which is the SOS opinion. Jackie said it's too old since it's from 2018 and they will not act until they receive newer guidance. This opinion was set forth in a court of law, giving it legal precedence, and it must be followed until challenged and successfully overridden in a court of law.
Judge, time has expired.
Go ahead and wrap up, Mr. Chick. I'll let you wrap it up. Go ahead.
Okay, the TEC opinion does not expire, and the opinion also states that the registrar must act promptly on challenges. We all just want Bexar County to follow the law and maintain clean voter rolls. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Brian Wechter? I hope I got close.
You nailed it, Your Honor.
Oh.
Your Honor and Commission members, I am speaking to you today regarding illegalities surrounding signage at polling sites during the March 2024 primary election. At judges' training prior to the start of early voting, the judges were, 1, shown a sign, Democrats vote here, that was included in the judges' equipment with no accompanying Republican sign. 2, were told it had been approved by the Secretary of State. And 3, were told to place it at the polling site. Questioning this directive, a number of judges contacted the Republican Party of Bexar County. Direct telephone conversations between the Republican Party and the Texas Secretary of State, Director of Elections, revealed falsehoods and illegalities. The Secretary of State's office had not approved the signage. The signage was in violation of Texas Election Code sections 172.127 and 173.003 and rules 81.109 and 81.132. The Secretary of State, Director of Elections, promptly wrote an email to the Bexar County Election Administrator dated February 21st, 2024, stating the violations and directing the signs be immediately removed. I have copies of that email for your full review if you would like them. Despite this directive, a complete removal of the signage in question did not occur. As an illustration, during early voting, a poll watcher went to a polling site and the sign was still up. The watcher alerted the judge of the sign violation, and the judge stated, quote, I know, I called downtown to see if I could remove it, and the election administrator told me no, leave it where it was, unquote. This is well after the election administrator had received a letter from the Secretary of State's office. This ignoring of the law on the part of the election administrator resulted in the Republican Party receiving numerous calls from Republican voters expressing confusion on where they were supposed to vote, thinking that there were separate polling sites for Democrats and for Republicans. With joint primaries where political parties share polling sites, these illegalities conceivably facilitated voter suppression and could, per the Secretary of State's email, constitute electioneering. Just prior to Election Day, the Republican Party received word the Democrat Party signs would again be included in the judge's equipment. The Republican Party chair and volunteers attended the morning voting equipment distribution and advised judges not to place the signs as they are in violation of the law. The Republican Party later received some reports there was a letter inserted with the voting materials stating not to put the signs up, even though the signs remained in the equipment for distribution. This confusion resulted in some signs being placed anyway, again in violation of the law. Public trust in Bexar County elections and their administration
Judge, time has expired.
Go ahead and wrap it up. Go ahead.
depends upon lawful and ethical behavior of all public servants involved in their oversight and execution. Our county tax dollars should not be used to support and protect willful violation of the law, period. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Clay.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Clay. I'm a U.S. Air Force officer, retired. I spent 20 years working in computer networks, computer design, fielding, testing, all aspects. I have a bachelor's in electrical engineering and a master's in computer engineering. I never got involved in politics until after the 2020 election, when all the allegations of fraud in computers came up. I said, well, gee, I know computers. I'd like to get involved and see what's going on. So I became a judge to learn the process, how to be an election judge. I became a poll watcher. I went to different sites all over the county. And I became a volunteer with the election integrity groups. And I can tell you, Bexar County is lacking in security and integrity for our elections in the computer side. Texas Election Code has many different safeguards to guard paper ballots. So once you put that paper ballot in a box, it's secure, and how to maintain that. Chain of custody is very important. In law enforcement, when you have chain of custody, if evidence is secured, you have a witness that will sign off on that. It's documented. Everywhere that evidence goes, if something happens to it, someone has to witness it and sign what happened. We don't do that with our paper ballots, as required by Texas Election Code. Election Assistance Commission has a best practices handbook that details all how to do chain of custody. Those are not all followed. Examples, we went down to watch the count of 3 precincts after the election, and the ballots were brought out in just boxes. No seals, no chain of custody records. Those ballots could have come from anywhere. I could have had them in my trunk. We also did a hand count of 2 different locations with the approval of the election administrator. And the ballots they brought out were in just boxes. We counted those 2 batches of ballots, and about a third of them didn't even have the signature of the election judge on the back. And if they told us if we'd had a recount, those could not have been used. They wouldn't have been legal. So we have government workers, and I look at them as public servants. I was one for 20 years when I served the Air Force. And they're servants to the public, the people. For that system to work and operate correctly, we need to have trust and confidence that our public servants are going to follow the laws we have and perform their actions correctly in our best interest, not someone else's. So, as I've learned, looking at how we administer elections here with the proprietary computers that nobody can look at, the public servants working for the public need to take extra action to be transparent and follow the laws. And I hope that we can do that as we move forward to get more confidence in our elections. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Huerta.
Good afternoon. What brings me here today, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen, is in the past, I received a letter that was directly in violation of my constitutional voting rights from the Bexar County Elections Department that removed me from the voter rolls and denied me the right to vote unless I introduced evidence of my eligibility to vote. Had it not been for the great work of the Texas Civil Rights Project and the attorney who's actually back there right now, I would not have been able to vote in one of the elections. We stood there for at least a couple of hours before our election administrator had to take directions from the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State had to get on the phone with her, I believe that one of the deputies, and explain to her that she could not legally ask people to prove that they were eligible, nor was it legal for her to even give notice by mail to people. The conservative organization, Texas Public Policy Foundation of the state of Texas, has much research out there that's used by both nonpartisan and partisan organizations when it comes to data. 8 out of 10 Texans have had contact with the criminal justice system. It is horrifying to think that at least 100,000 to 200,000 registered voters who have had justice contact with the justice system may or may not. We don't know how many number, but I can guarantee you it's probably in the tens of thousands, had their constitutional rights violated by our elections administrator. I'm here today because this past weekend, 2 weekends ago, I attended a meeting with the Texas Organizing Project and JOLT and other organizations where I learned that the training for voter registrars tells people that if you're going to register someone with a criminal history, that they would receive a letter from the elections department asking for more detail, a direct violation of the constitutional rights of registered voters of this county. I would like to know or ask for this committee to formally put forth an inquiry as to how far this unconstitutional action has been taking place. Thank you. I see the light coming on. And if you haven't been convinced that we need new leadership and new ideas and real people who care at the elections department, I don't know what else it would take. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Odd is the last person that has been signed up. I want to make sure that I have not skipped anybody or somebody that has signed up. Is there anybody that you need to sign up before you speak? Have we failed to call out anybody's name?
I just want to mention I do have printouts of the Secretary of State opinion if you would like to print out.
If you'll give it to our clerk, Nicole, would you please receive it? And do you have copies for each member of the commission? All right. At this time, the time is 4:34 p.m. on Friday, June 28th. At this time, the election commission will recess in order to go to executive session. Pursuant to Section 551074 of the Texas Government Code, items which will be discussed and act upon, if appropriate, in open session will be personnel matters regarding the position of elections administrator. So at this time, I will ask all those, and I will ask that the following people remain. Is it Jerry Respondic? I'll ask that you stay as the recorder for executive session as required by law. I'll ask that Sue Jana, who is here as an attorney with the District Attorney's Office Civil Section, will be here to offer advice. And I'll ask that Ms. Jackie Callanan remain in the court in order to discuss those matters that are going to be discussed. And so at this time, I'll ask, is there any other discussion matters? This time, the court calls a recess. I'll ask that everybody, we will re-engage with the meeting and finish out the business of today's afternoon's meeting. So this time, please excuse yourself, and those that have been asked to remain, please remain at this time.